Most gardeners shut it all down in October. They pull up the tomatoes. They dump out the containers. They pack away the gloves and say the same thing they say every year. See you in spring. And every single year they pay full price at the grocery store through November, December, January, February, and March. That's 5 months of complete dependence. 5 months of not knowing what's on your food, where it came from, or who handled it. 5 months of watching the checkout total climb at the register for produce that traveled 1,500 miles to reach your cart, picked before it was ripe, stored in a cold truck, stripped of the nutrients it was supposed to carry. Here's the truth that most gardeners never discover. Frost is not the end of your garden. Frost is a filter. It separates the plants that merely tolerate cold from the ones that are actually transformed by it, made sweeter, more nutritious, and more powerful because of it. The gardening industry wants you to believe that fall means stop. Seed companies send their final catalogs in August. Big box garden centers clear their shelves in September and replace the soil bags with Halloween decorations and then Christmas lights. The message is loud and consistent. Your growing season is over. It isn't. The gardening season is far from over. And before we go any further, if you are serious about building a real food system for your family, one that actually produces through every season and genuinely cuts your grocery bill, I want you to go to growyourground.com right now. We've put together a complete 2-guide bundle, a beginner's foundation, and an advanced self-sufficiency blueprint that gives you the exact system for growing and preserving your own food year-round. Families using this system are saving $600 or more every single year. The bundle is available for just $29.90, and there's a 14-day money-back guarantee. Zero risk. The link is in the description. Go check it out after this video. Or right now, pause and go, because the launch price won't last forever. Growyourground.com, in the description below. Now, let's talk about 5 plants that don't just survive frost. They thrive in it. Before we get to the plants, you need to understand something that will completely reframe how you think about fall gardening. Plants have defense mechanisms. When temperatures drop, not to killing lows, but to that 28 to 38 degree Fahrenheit range that makes most people abandon their gardens, certain plants do something extraordinary. They convert their stored starches into sugars. It's a biological antifreeze, a survival response that's been encoded into their DNA over millions of years of evolution. The result? A kale leaf that tastes slightly bitter in August becomes almost sweet in November. A carrot pulled from frozen ground in December is sweeter than anything you will find at the grocery store in any month of the year. A parsnip left in the ground after the first frost is barely recognizable as the same vegetable. The frost doesn't destroy these plants, it completes them. And here's the part that matters for your family. These are also some of the most nutritious vegetables you can grow. Cold weather crops tend to be dense in vitamins C and K, folate, iron, calcium, and antioxidants. They are the vegetables your body actually needs most during the months when fresh food is scarcest. You have been conditioned to think of fall as the end of the garden. Fall is actually the beginning of something better. The 5 plants I'm about to show you work in Zone 4 through Zone 9. They work in raised beds, in the ground, in large containers on a patio, and, with one simple cheap tool we'll talk about, in cold frames that extend your harvest by 3 to 4 additional months. They work for people who are gardening for the first time at 62 years old, just as much as they work for experienced growers. And if you want the complete system, it's all in the bundle at growyourground.com. Let's get into the plants. Plant number 1, kale. I'm starting here because kale is the plant that will shock you the most. Not because it's unknown. You've heard of kale, obviously. It's on every health food menu and in every grocery store from November through March. But the kale you buy at the grocery store and the kale you harvest from your own garden after 3 consecutive nights of frost are not the same vegetable. They share a name. That is approximately where the similarities end. Kale is what botanists call a biennial. It completes its full life cycle over 2 years. But for our purposes, what matters is this. Kale is one of the most cold, hardy vegetables ever cultivated by human beings. Certain varieties, Winterbor, Red Russian, Lacinato, can survive temperatures as low as 10 degrees Fahrenheit with nothing but a light row cover over them. In a basic cold frame, a structure you can build from a reclaimed window and 4 2x4s for $10 to $15 in materials, kale will produce edible leaves through temperatures as low as 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. In Zone 6, you can harvest kale every single month of the year. In Zone 4 and Zone 5, with a cold frame, you can harvest through January and February. In Zone 8 and Zone 9, kale is essentially a winter annual. You plant it in fall and harvest continuously until the heat of spring pushes it to bolt. Now, here's what most gardeners don't know. But it's the second and third frosts, the repeated cycling of freeze and thaw, that fully activate the sugar conversion in kale leaves. Leaves harvested after the third hard frost of the season are measurably sweeter than leaves harvested before the first. This is not folklore, it's measurable plant chemistry. For square-foot gardening practitioners, and if you don't know that method, the blueprint at growyourground.com covers it in detail. Kale occupies 1 square per plant and produces cuts for weeks or months from a single plant. You don't harvest the whole plant at once. You take the outer leaves, leave the center growing point intact, and the plant keeps producing. 1 square foot of kale, properly harvested, can yield enough for a family of 4 to have kale 2 or 3 times per week through an entire winter. When you plant kale in a raised bed, which provides superior drainage and warms faster in spring, the extended root zone lets the plant build significant reserves before frost arrives. The deeper your soil, the better your kale weathers cold snaps. Start your fall kale no later than 6 to 8 weeks before your first expected frost. In most of Zone 5 and Zone 6, that means a late July or early August planting. In Zone 7 and Zone 8, you can direct sow as late as September and still get a full winter crop. Start your fall kale no later than 6 to 8 weeks before your first expected frost. In most of Zone 5 and Zone 6, that means a late July or early August planting. In Zone 7 and Zone 8, you can direct sow as late as September and still get a full winter crop. One last thing about kale. It is extraordinarily rich in vitamin K, critical for bone density, which becomes increasingly important as we age past 50. It's also one of the highest sources of plant-based calcium available. The vegetable you pull from your cold frame on a January morning is delivering nutrition that nothing in your grocery store's produce section can match in that same month. Plant kale. Protect it minimally. Let the frost do its work. Then stand in your garden on a cold Saturday morning in December and pull a handful of leaves while your neighbors are driving to the store. That feeling has a name. It's called independence. Plant number 2, spinach. If kale is the workhorse of the fall garden, spinach is the miracle, because spinach does something that seems, on the surface, to be impossible. Spinach can freeze solid, completely solid, leaves rigid and brittle as glass, and then thaw out and continue growing normally as if nothing happened. Let me be precise about this because it matters. Spinach leaves at around 25 to 28 degrees Fahrenheit will ice over. The cells will form ice crystals. The plant will look, to any casual observer, like it is dead and done and finished. Then the temperature rises to 38 degrees, 40 degrees. The ice melts, the leaves relax, and the spinach plant sits there, alive, as if it simply had a long nap. This is not a gardening myth. It's cellular biology. Spinach concentrates dissolved sugars and salts in its cell sap, lowering the freezing point of the liquid inside each cell. The ice forms between the cells, not inside them. The cellular structure remains intact. When the temperature rises, the plant resumes normal function. The practical implication is enormous. You can be harvesting spinach in November, in December, in January, in a cold frame. In February, if your cold frame is in a reasonably sunny location and you are in Zone 6 or warmer. For the succession planting system, which the Food Self-Sufficiency Blueprint covers in detail, spinach is one of the crops that rewards repeated, staggered plantings most dramatically. Plant a small row or a container every 2 to 3 weeks from mid-August through mid-October. As each planting matures, you have a fresh wave of tender young leaves coming behind it. The feast and famine pattern that kills most home garden efforts disappears. In containers, which is critically important for people gardening on balconies, patios, or small outdoor spaces, Spinach performs beautifully in a window box or a shallow 12-inch pot. It does not need depth, it needs consistent moisture and at least 4 hours of sun. A heavy spinach harvest can be blanched and frozen in portions. A bag of frozen blanched spinach carries essentially full nutritional value for 8 to 12 months. One productive fall spinach bed can stock your freezer with the equivalent of $30 to $40 worth of organic frozen spinach before Christmas. The math on homegrown food is relentless in your favor. Start spinach now. Don't wait. Every week you delay in fall is a week of harvest you don't get. In Zone 7, you have until mid-October to get seeds in the ground. In Zone 5, your window is closing around late September. Wherever you are, check your frost dates and count backwards 8 weeks. That's your spinach planting date. Circle it. Plant number 3, the shock item. I need you to stop for a moment, because what I'm about to tell you will sound wrong. You will probably think I've made a mistake, or that I'm talking about a different plant. It's none of those things. This is verified by agricultural extension programs at major universities. It's documented in homesteading literature going back 200 years, and it is one of the least known, most productive things you can do in a fall garden. Plant number 3 is carrots, specifically carrots that you leave in the ground, through frost, into the first hard freezes, deliberately, on purpose, as a strategy. Here is what happens. The exact same cellular mechanism that works in spinach and kale, the conversion of starch to sugar, occurs in the carrot root. But in a carrot, the effect is more dramatic. A carrot left in the ground through 2 or 3 hard frosts can be twice as sweet as the same carrot pulled in September. Some heritage varieties, Danvers 126, Scarlet Nantes, the Japanese Kuroda, become almost dessert-like. Children who won't eat store-bought carrots will eat these straight out of the ground. This is the sweetness of ice phenomenon. Here's the additional strategic genius of ground-stored carrots. When you leave carrots in the ground, the soil itself acts as insulation. The root is protected from the most severe cold by several inches of earth above it. In Zone 6 and warmer, you can often pull carrots with just straw mulch. In colder zones, Zone 4 and Zone 5, a cold frame or even a thick insulating blanket of leaves over the bed can extend ground storage of carrots by 6 to 8 weeks beyond your first hard freeze. And carrots in raised beds, where drainage is superior, often overwinter better than in-ground carrots in heavy clay soil. Raised beds allow you to create the ideal loose, well-draining environment that carrot roots need, and prevents rot. For square-foot gardening practitioners, carrots are one of the highest density crops you can grow. 16 carrots per square foot. A 4x4 raised bed gives you 160 carrots per planting. A fall succession crop planted in August delivers a spectacular harvest precisely when store food is most expensive. You are leaving those carrots in the ground this fall. You are mulching over them. You are pulling them in December and biting into one cold, sweet carrot in your garden. And you are never going back. Plant number 4, arugula. Most people know arugula as the peppery green on restaurant salads and fancy pizzas. What most people don't know is that arugula is one of the most aggressively cold-tolerant leafy greens in existence. 21 to 40 days from seed to first harvest, in the right conditions, closer to 21 than 40. That speed matters in fall gardening. Arugula is the sprint champion of the fall garden. It also self-seeds prolifically. Plant arugula once, let a few plants go to seed in late fall, and you will have volunteer arugula appearing, without replanting. In a no-dig or no-till garden system, your arugula patch becomes essentially self-sustaining. In a cold frame, arugula can be harvested well into January in Zone 6. In Zone 7 and warmer, it's a true winter crop, often growing continuously outdoors through the entire winter with no protection at all during mild stretches. Arugula's cold tolerance comes with a flavor bonus similar to the frost sweetening in kale and carrots. The peppery bite mellows slightly in cold weather while retaining that distinctive depth. Cold-grown arugula is frequently described as having a nuttier, more complex flavor. From a nutritional perspective, arugula is extraordinarily dense for its caloric content, high in vitamin K, vitamin A, calcium, and folate. It's also rich in glucosinolates. A daily small salad of homegrown fall arugula is delivering a nutritional payload that most people in winter simply don't have access to. In containers and window boxes, arugula is excellent. It doesn't need deep soil. It grows fast enough to produce multiple cut-and-come-again harvests. You can grow a continuous supply on an apartment balcony through October, November, and December, with nothing but the box, mix, and seeds. The seeds are inexpensive. The germination rate is high. The time to first harvest is shorter than almost any other vegetable. The cold hardiness is exceptional. The nutritional density is remarkable. The flavor improves in cold weather. There is almost no argument against growing fall arugula. Plant number 5, parsnips. We started with kale. We moved through spinach, carrots, and arugula. Plant number 5 is the one that gardeners who grow it describe as the crop that changed everything. Parsnips. And I understand if your initial reaction is skepticism. Parsnips are underrepresented in modern American gardening. They're not at the top of any beginner's list. You might have tasted them once and found them interesting but not memorable. That parsnip had probably never experienced a frost. A properly frost-sweetened parsnip, pulled from the ground in late November or December, is one of the most remarkable vegetables in existence. It is deeply sweet, sometimes described as combining the flavors of carrot, vanilla, and walnut, with a starchiness that becomes almost buttery when roasted. Here's the key information about parsnips. They are extraordinarily resistant to cold. Parsnips can survive through temperatures as low as 0 degrees Fahrenheit in the ground with adequate mulching. In Zone 4 and Zone 5, they can be dug through December and January. The other critical detail: parsnips take 100 to 130 days to mature from seed. This is not a quick crop. You plant them in late spring to early summer, and you leave them alone all summer. They grow quietly. They don't demand much. And then fall arrives. The first frosts come. The starch-to-sugar conversion begins, and you have something extraordinary waiting for you underground. This is succession planning at its most strategic. While your summer gardening attention goes to tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, your parsnips are doing their slow, quiet work in a corner. By October, they're ready. By November, they're exceptional. By December, they're at their peak for holiday meals and winter dinners. And the seed-saving potential of parsnips is significant. Parsnips are biennial. A single parsnip plant can produce thousands of seeds. Those seeds remain viable for 1 to 2 years. This is exactly the kind of closed-loop food system the Food Self-Sufficiency Blueprint is designed to help you build. One planting, one season of patience, a harvest that continues through the coldest months, seed saved for free next year. That is how food independence compounds. The tools. Extending your season. We've talked about 5 plants. Now let's talk about the one piece of infrastructure that multiplies everything: the cold frame. A cold frame is the single most cost-effective investment in year-round food production that a home gardener can make. It is not complicated. It does not require electricity, plumbing, advanced construction skills, or significant money. The simplest version is a reclaimed window, placed on top of 4 boards arranged in a rectangle in your garden. That's it. That is a functional cold frame. What does it do? It creates a microclimate inside, warmer during the day by 10 to 20 degrees, and insulated against the sharpest nighttime cold that extends your growing season by 6 to 8 weeks on each end of the year. For kale and spinach, the cold frame is transformative. These crops become near invincible in a cold frame. In Zone 6, a cold-frame kale or spinach planting can produce edible greens through January without supplemental heat of any kind. Beyond the basic window-on-boards cold frame, the next level is row cover fabric. Draped over a hoop structure made from bent PVC or wire, it creates a low tunnel that costs under $40 and can protect an entire raised bed from frost. These are the tools that real, serious, year-round food gardeners use. The complete tool list, what you actually need, is in the beginner's guide at growyourground.com. If you're just starting out, it tells you exactly what to spend and what to skip. No bloated tool lists, the honest minimum. Every month that you grow your own food, you are making a choice to be a producer rather than a consumer. And that choice compounds in ways that are hard to fully appreciate until you've done it for a year or two. The first season, you're learning. You make mistakes. Some plants disappoint you. Others exceed every expectation. You start to develop intuition about your specific soil, your specific light, your specific microclimate. You start to understand, in a practical, embodied way, how food actually grows. The second season, you're optimizing. You know which mistakes to avoid. You've identified your most productive crops. You have a functioning mental model of your garden space and what it can do. Your grocery bill starts to show the difference. By the third season, something has shifted in how you relate to food, to seasons, and to your family's security in a way that's difficult to articulate but is completely real. You look at a frost warning and think, good, the kale will be sweeter. You look at a full pantry shelf and feel something that has no good single-word equivalent in English. A kind of quiet, grounded competence. A sense of having done something real. These are the plants that people grew for thousands of years to feed their families through winter. They work. They have always worked. We just forgot about them for a few decades of grocery store abundance. Abundance that is now becoming less reliable, less affordable, and less nutritious with every passing year. You don't have to accept that. If you are watching this in early fall and your first frost is still 4 to 6 weeks away, you have time to direct sow kale, spinach, and arugula outdoors right now. Get seeds in the ground within the next week. Set up a cold frame or gather row cover material. Plant a row of carrots if you haven't already. Check whether parsnips are in the ground. If not, mark May of next year in your calendar. If you are watching this closer to your first frost date, 2 to 3 weeks away, focus on arugula and spinach in containers or under cold frames, where they'll establish faster in the protected microclimate. Move any remaining outdoor kale plants under cold frame protection. Leave your carrots in the ground with a thick straw mulch blanket. If frost has already arrived where you are, it is not over. Kale and spinach can be planted under cold frames right now in most zones, and will overwinter in a dormant or semi-dormant state, resuming growth as soon as daylight begins to lengthen in late January and February. A cold frame planting of spinach made in October in Zone 6 will often provide the earliest spring harvest of any vegetable, before anything else in the garden has stirred, because it's been sitting under that frame all winter, waiting. The garden never fully stops. You just have to know where to look. And if you want the complete framework, the succession planting schedules, the seasonal food calendar, the soil building program, the preservation techniques for these exact crops, go to growyourground.com. The 2-guide bundle gives you everything organized into a system that works together. The beginner's guide gets you growing. The food self-sufficiency blueprint makes it year-round. Together they are the complete map from where most people are, fully dependent on grocery stores, to where you can realistically be in 1 to 2 seasons. $29.90. 14-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the description. The reason most people don't have a fall garden isn't because they don't know about kale. It's not because they couldn't find arugula seeds. It's not because they don't have the space or the tools or the time. It's because somewhere along the way, most of us learned to accept the grocery store as our only option. We learned that food comes from somewhere else, produced by someone else, and that our job is simply to pay for it when it arrives. That's a system. And it's a system that has been getting more expensive, less reliable, and less transparent every single year. But here's the thing about systems. They only have power over you if you don't build an alternative. The 5 plants in this video are the beginning of an alternative, not a complete replacement, not an off-grid fantasy that requires selling your house and buying a farm, just an alternative, a partial one, a growing one, a seasonally consistent one, that makes you less dependent every single month. The kale in your cold frame in January is not just a vegetable, it's evidence. It's proof that you can produce something real from your own space in the dead of winter, without a supply chain or a supermarket or a truck that drove 1,500 miles. That evidence compounds. One season of fall gardening leads to a second leads to a third. By year 3, you are not the same person you were when you pulled that first frost-sweetened kale leaf in November. You have built something: skills, knowledge, infrastructure, a different relationship with your food, your land, and your family's future. Start now. Plant the kale, sow the spinach, mulch the carrots. Let the frost do its work. And if you want the complete system, the succession schedules, the food preservation techniques, the seasonal calendar, the soil building program, go to growyourground.com. The complete bundle is in the description. Get it before the launch pricing ends. Before you go, next week, I'm going to tell you about a plant that has been deliberately overlooked by mainstream gardening culture for the last 50 years. Not because it doesn't grow well in cold weather, it grows extraordinarily well. Not because it isn't productive. Under the right conditions, it may be the highest calorie crop per square foot that a home gardener can grow in winter. But because it challenges something we have all been taught to believe about what gardens are for and what home food production can look like. Not because it isn't productive. Under the right conditions, it may be the highest calorie crop per square foot that a home gardener can grow in winter. I'm calling it the forbidden winter plant. And if what I've told you today surprised you, what I'm going to show you next week will change how you see your growing space entirely. Subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'll see you then.